Don't judge me, guys. I know I have too many spec stocks. I really have too many Chinese stocks as well, but I just cannot resist any longer. Ever since I sold Neo stock for a profit a couple years ago, I've been really itching to jump back into it. And more recently, I've just been seeing how aggressively they're expanding their business. And I think it's super impressive. And to be honest with you, I was just sitting around earlier today and I was looking at the news headlines and news feed on my phone, and this new article pops up talking about how Neo is going to be announcing another two new models at their Neo Day later this month. And they have plans to have five new models by the first half of 2023. And I just feel like enough is enough. I gotta buy at least a tiny piece of this stock because this is a Chinese electric vehicle autonomous driving company that at this point is really starting to remind me of the early days or the early years of Tesla when all the legacy players were just kind of sitting around being too lazy to innovate, too scared to take any risk, take any chances on anything. And Tesla comes along and they go all in on electric vehicles, they go all in on autonomous driving, and it helps build up this huge lead for them that they're benefiting from now for the long term. And I'm not saying that Neo will be an exact replica of that. The EV market is obviously way more competitive now than it once was, and these legacy automakers are finally starting to release electric vehicles of their own. So it's a much different environment now and it's much more competitive. But I mean, I still look at Neo and they're announcing new models every single year while these legacy automakers are, they barely have like one or two EVs in total, most of them. And those EVs are often getting recalled. They're never even available. Like try looking up an EV for purchase from, Ford or GM or whatever. Most of them barely have any kind of autonomous driving technology, and most of them are not even available. You usually can't even purchase them because they're out of stock, they're on recall, there's issues, there's all kinds of things going on. But you're telling me that this tiny little Chinese startup already has this down to the point where they have multiple different models. They're releasing new ones every year. They've got amazing technology, amazing autonomous driving technology that is getting close to rivaling even that of Tesla. They are even making a smartphone, which I can't think of any other automaker who's doing that. They've got great margins. They're expanding internationally. They've already expanded into Europe. They're going to be expanding into the United States soon too. And they're selling literally every single vehicle that they can make. Yeah, I'm going to take a little bet on that stock. And look, I know that this is a very speculative, high risk stock. I honestly think that the average person should not even be touching Neo stock. The average person doesn't know enough about them. They should not be making a bet on it. It's too risky. There's much safer, much better stocks out there. But I feel like I know what I'm doing with this stock because I actually purchased just a tiny amount of it. In fact, I only purchased 1/10 of the overall position that I actually want in Neo stock. And I have experience from it from before that I used to own Neo stock. So I kind of know how volatile this stock can be. I only purchased 1/10 of the position that I actually wanted it. So I can literally buy the same amount 10 times more. So if the stock crashes, it's not a big deal. I can easily buy a lot more and lower my cost basis, assuming that I still love the company and everything, right? But it's a gamble. I know it's a speculative stock. It's only a tiny little position in my portfolio, and I feel that I have the right mindset and strategy for it. So that's what I want to kind of talk to you about in today's video. I want to just give you a quick little update on the stock, quick update on the business, let you know why I'm buying it right now, what price I'm buying it at, and everything that's going on. So let's just quickly pull up the stock chart here and let's just dive into it. Okay, so as you can see here, the stock has just been getting absolutely destroyed over the past year. It's currently down over 80% from the top, which was over $65 a share at one point, and it's now down to like almost $10 a share. And I bought it right at these levels too. Here's a screenshot of the price I purchased it at on Robinhood. But this has now sent their valuation falling from a price to sales ratio that was at 1.30, if you can believe it. Just a couple years ago, it's over 30, and now it's less than 3 today. And that's a pretty good PS ratio, price to sales ratio, for a high growth speculative stock. And that's exactly what Neo is. Like, despite that enormous crash, I actually think that their business has been absolutely on fire during that time. In fact, their sales have skyrocketed in recent years, jumping from 56% growth in 2019 to more than doubling in 2020, then repeating that performance in 2021. And by the way, this was at a time when China has had crazy lockdowns, supply chain disruptions that have caused NIO to literally shut down their operations multiple times, but yet they still managed to grow by triple digit percentages, which is just, insane in my opinion. And then here in 2022, the growth is falling down to 40%, but that's only after they already grew by so much prior at triple digits, and it's still expected to jump up again to 80% growth next year as well. So there's no sugarcoating this. It is really like unbelievable performance here when you consider the horrible conditions that they had to deal with. And that's actually another great thing about NIO, is that they're doing everything they can to diversify outside of just China, with already a huge expansion into Europe underway, where they've already increased their international sales by about 400% this year. And I really don't see that slowing down in the future. In fact, only 1,000 vehicles were sold in Europe so far, but they've already hit over 300,000 vehicles produced in total, which, by the way, is up from 200,000 just 8 months ago. So they grew their production by like 50% in just a matter of months, while selling every single one of those vehicles that they can make. And again, this is a startup that we're talking about here, and yet they already have 6 different models in production for customers to choose from. 6 different models, while most legacy automakers are like barely producing 1 or 2 EVs that are usually not even available. And they've already built close to 400 NIO houses and spaces, which are really nice showrooms and customer lounge facilities. They have over 1,200 battery swap stations where customers can switch their batteries out for fully charged ones in just a couple minutes. And I think that's actually, could be a game changer in the market, and it really helps them at the very least differentiate NIO from the competition. And they also have almost 13,000 charging stations and access to almost a million third-party ones too. They're developing their own smartphone to integrate better with their cars. I mean, there's just not even a single automaker that I can think of that is even attempting that. They're entering the US market in just a couple years, which is going to be huge. That's like the 3rd biggest market behind China and Europe. They've already started building battery swap stations in Europe, which are manufactured in their brand new Hungary plant. They just recently launched their new ET5 sedan in Europe, which they were highly anticipated, and I think they're likely going to drive sales much higher next quarter and over the coming year too, because they start at about the same price tag as a Tesla Model 3 if you sign up for the monthly battery swap service. So it's a pretty attractive price too. And then despite already having 6 different models, the reason why I finally just pulled the trigger on the stock, kind of on impulse to be honest, but it's because they're already planning to launch another 5 different models by the first half of 2023, which is absolutely nuts. Now, I believe some of those may be refreshes to their already existing lineup, because they've said that they will have 8 unique models in total, but that's still super impressive, and it already includes a refreshed ES8 SUV with more cameras and LiDAR equipped for better autonomous functionality, as well as what looks to be a station wagon version of their new ET5 that are both rumored to show up at their upcoming NIO Day later this month to finish off the 2022 year. But again, guys, I just have to stress here that this is a startup that we're talking about, and they already have 8 different models in their lineup. That's incredible. If anything, I think they might be expanding too quickly, because I think you only really need a few different models. Like you only need maybe a couple SUVs or sedans, maybe a pickup truck for the American market, but that should be about it. On the other hand, I can kind of see what they're doing here. By having so many different models, you really cater to your entire audience. You have multiple price points, and by releasing new models all the time, you're constantly kept up in the news headlines and in the spotlight, and you keep people talking about you every year, which raises your popularity. So I'd still rather have the company that is maybe trying to do a little too much, rather than the lazy legacy player that is too complacent and too scared to take any risk and just kind of slowly goes out of business. And sure, NIO is, this ambitious one may be a lot riskier than those. In fact, that's really the biggest issue when it comes to NIO, is their giant losses that they were actually making a lot of good progress on before the huge expansions of the past couple years really started to weigh down heavy on them. But you might be surprised by just how close they actually are to turning a profit, which their CEO recently stated in their earnings call that they are aiming to break even by as soon as the end of next year. Basically, that they'll start generating positive cash flow in just a year's time. And personally, I think that's too optimistic considering how aggressively they are expanding and how much that really should be weighing down on them. But when they start to when they finally get settled into these international markets, I mean, you're talking about some great margins here that they can really build off of, like a gross profit margin of over 14%. Sure, that may not be as good as Tesla, but that's already higher than both GM and Ford. That's crazy for how much longer GM and Ford and these legacy players have been doing it versus this, recently new relatively new startup. And that's even without NIO being fully profitable yet. And by the way, their vehicle specific margins are even higher. So it's not like they're just selling energy credits to be profitable. That's an argument that bears like to make, especially with Tesla. But they tend to completely ignore the vehicle specific margins, which a lot of these legacy players don't like to show, because EVs and AVs tend to be produced at a cheaper price but sell for a much higher premium. They sell like a Mercedes or a BMW. Yet Tesla and NIO, they're selling every single vehicle they can make because they're in such high demand. EVs are in such high demand right now. And even longer term, NIO is still planning to release actually a cheaper sub brand that I think could potentially sell like crazy too. Because the way I see it right now, I think that NIO is expanding internationally with the more premium vehicles that are more profitable for them. And that way they can gain popularity because these more expensive ones have really good technology. And so people start to look at them, they're more attractive, they gain more attention. And then once they already kind of have their foot in the door and they've already expanded into these different markets and you start to see them out on the road, then they release the cheaper sub brand and then people are already think of NIO. They already have a good impression of it because of what they've already seen. And then you've got the more budget oriented mass market wanting to jump into it, and then they see it at a cheaper price point and they're like, oh, okay, I'm all in, and then they start buying those too. So the way I see it, they're expanding right now with the more expensive vehicles, but then they'll flood in the market with the cheaper sub brand later on too. So I just see so much potential here for NIO. Time will tell if they're actually successful. I still think it's super risky and speculative, which is why I only bought a tiny amount, and I still own a much larger position in Tesla, who is my kind of safer bet long term. But if China ever becomes, the dominant force of the world, then some of these Chinese EV players could become much larger. And I just want to have a little tiny piece of that just in case. So anyway, that's how I feel about NIO stock and everything that's going on. What do you guys think? Do you agree with my move here? Have any of you taken a chance on NIO? Like I said, I don't think this is the right stock for the average person, but I'd love to hear what you guys have to say if any of you took a chance on it, or if you completely disagree with me, I totally understand that. Let me know why in the comment section. And thank you so much for stopping by and for all the support. Hope you're all doing well, and I will catch you in the next video. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.